Well, I haven't said anything about me being the only one to do anything, so let me try that. I'm the only one to separate Siamese twins. The only one to operate on babies while they were still in the mother's womb. The only one to take out half of a brain, although you would think if you go to Washington that someone had beat me to it. But I'm very hopeful that I'm not the only one who's willing to pick up the baton of freedom, because freedom is not free and we must fight for it every day. Every one of us must fight for it because we're fighting for our children and the next generation.
Okay, Ben Carson. Now, I think Ben Carson handled himself very well last night for that to be his first debate. Now, I am a center-left person who typically votes Democratic. So that puts me at natural odds at a lot of the things that Ben Carson represents or stands for. But not, I wouldn't say everything. There's some things that he says that makes perfect sense to me. And then there's some things that I think, are kind of way left field. And I feel that way, for a lot of the candidates, not necessarily conservative principles as much, but some of how the candidates represent conservative principles. All right. But with Ben Carson, I think that last night he spoke in a calm, deliberate manner. He seemed like someone who has thought about his positions and thought about how he needed to articulate those positions. So I think he did quite well. And I mean, I read somewhere where they said he was a listless. I don't know about that. I know in the beginning he seemed to be a little more reserved. But again, he's not a polished politician, doesn't claim to be. I don't think that should be a mark against him anyway. I for one am tired of polished politicians. Someone who has rehearsed a line over and over and ready to get on stage and spout this rehearsed line. And I didn't get that from Ben Carson last night. I felt like Ben Carson, if I had a word to use, I would say authentic. Not unlike, Donald Trump in a way. Donald Trump's authenticity is a little more brash and in your face, whereas Ben Carson's is a little more reserved, calm demeanor, but it's still that authenticity that you can appreciate. And so I think that in light of that, he did an extremely good job, particularly for, first time on a debate stage. Now, all that being said, I know that he has a hard road to toe, because a lot of African Americans tend to vote Democratic, and they tend to see any African Americans that are Republicans, they tend to see them as betraying the race or, Uncle Tom's or whatever other negative thing you want to put there. Now, me personally, I'm always happy to see the Adam West's of the world, the Ben Carsons of the world, the Clarence Thomases of the world on the Republican side. I think it is absolutely crazy for anyone to think that all African Americans, all black people are supposed to think the same way. And it's crazy for any African American to say to Ben Carson he's a traitor or he's a sellout because he has different views and views that happen to be conservative. That's absolutely foolish talk, and I would stamp that down wherever. And like I said, I tend to vote Democratic, and so there are a lot of issues that Ben Carson and I don't see eye to eye on, but I appreciate his positions. I appreciate where he is on a number of issues, and So I'm impressed, and I'm wishing him well on that side. Again, he has a tough road to hoe, but he understands that. He's been very successful as a neurosurgeon. So he's not ambitious to be president for any reason other than the fact that he believes that he can make a difference. And I truly believe that. I believe that Ben Carson is a principled man, a principled candidate, and we can do a lot worse than Ben Carson in the White House. And I'm saying all that again as not a Ben Carson supporter, as someone who typically votes Democratic in most elections, but also someone who recognizes that there are some decent, well-proven conservative points, and it'll take calm, rational people like Ben Carson sometimes to get those points outside of the echo chamber. Now, again, Ben Carson has some outlandish things that I won't get into, but everybody has some outlandish things, So I won't hold that against him. But I do like his delivery, and I do think that as long as he continues to be a principled person who believes in what he says, believes in what he stands for, and he continues to deliver that statement and that belief in that deliberate manner in a way that people can understand it, I think he'll go far. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be people like Ben Carson, people like John Kasich, that's going to do more for the Republican Party than people realize. Now, John Kasich is a little more moderate than Ben. Ben has some far right viewpoints on a lot of issues, but his delivery and the way that he espoused those beliefs, I think, is what's going to serve him in the party well. And as far as John Kasich, if you've seen some of my previous blog posts, you know how I feel about that particular candidate. I honestly think that he's probably the best on that side as far as who could win a national election. I think he's conservative enough to please the Conservative Party as a whole, but I think he has just enough of sensible, rational views that he'll be easy on the eyes for a lot of Democratic voters. And I believe that going into last night's debate, and I believe that on the outside of last night's debate, coming out of last night's debate. So Ben Carson, John Kasich, good debate showings last night. And again, I think both will serve their side well going forward.